Hey everyone, Cursed here, and right now we're looking at a Ziatora the Incinerator, a mass sacrifice deck. For those who might not know at a glance, a mass is when you put the number, so amass 2, you put two +1/+1 counters on an army you control, and if you don't control one, you create a 0/0 army token first. So armies are very good to when there is not one on the field because it creates a body, and otherwise it just grows one. So this deck comes from Token Tezzy, who is looking for general advice on it, but they don't want anything too expensive, such as Vampiric Tutor or Mana Vault. We can work with that for sure. So let's talk about this kind of deck and see what we have here. The first thought is this is going to have a lot of aristocrat style elements in it because we are creating bodies and we are then sacrificing those bodies. Though something that is very clear is that we will not have as many. It's not about the quantity we sacrifice, it is about the power of those creatures and the repeatability. They said so themselves, saying that early game they're planning on sacrificing a lot of little amass tokens, and later game they are hoping to sacrifice bigger amass tokens. They called it said junk amass fling with Ziatora and Thud and Fling style effects. Where is Fling? I know you're here. There it is. Fling, where you just throw the creature as hard as you can at an opponent. So let's talk about what this means for us. Something to consider is that the power of our armies is very important, and so we want to work towards increasing the power of our armies in addition to sacrificing. So army creation is easy, army sacrifice is easy, army growth that we care about. So the first thing I immediately think of, if I can spell her name right, is Judith. Judith the Scourge Diva says other creatures you control get +1/+0. It's true that she does not affect non-token creatures, so her Blood Artist style effect will not trigger, but she will trigger off of, she will grow the size of all of your amass tokens by 1, and she will trigger when you sacrifice other creatures, which you are bound to do. But let's say that's not what we want. We want something a little simpler. Well, all armies are black. Bad Moon is very clean here to just across the board increase the power of your armies. After that, the next thought is proliferation. I'm thinking exactly which ones we'd be looking for. Things like Bloated Contaminator. I believe you already have Canker Bloom. Yep, already there. And there are a few that on sacrifice proliferate, which is very interesting. Plague Mob Beast, for example. I think those options are nice. In green and red, sorry, in green and black, if we sort by mana value, we have two here that are really worth playing. Thirsting Roots and Whisper of the Dross. Let's see if we're playing either of them. I don't see it. They are both decent cards that have proliferate 1, which can be nice to proliferate if you have other targets. However, once again, we're spending a card to put an additional counter on, and that is just equivalent to having another amass. So, is there a better solution to this? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say the first thing we got to think about is where the majority of our amass cards come from. We can see just by numbers, most of them seem to come from creatures, and a few of them from sorceries and instants. So immediately, I think of a card like Eternal Witness, because this will let us buy back one of our amass cards in order to use it again. I think of reanimation spells. Let's see how low power we can get these. 3 mana is reasonable. So something like Unearth. I promise I spell better most of the time. Unearth is good to get a 3 mana spell. Then Persist is good to get any non-legendary creature back with the -1/-1 counter, which is fine because most of the time you aren't getting these creatures for their power. You're getting them so that you can use them to amass. So that's fine. Hmm. Other than that, my thoughts immediately go to there is a bit of, I'm not going to say a problem. I think my thought on Judith was the direction we should be going into. So let's look at another way of making this happen. Let's say something like this. Let's look for equipment, which is Transmorgant's Crown. Transmorgant uh, triggers. So first of all, it's easy to equip in black, but when the creature dies, you draw a card, and it also gives power. Once again, power is the thing you care the most about. So you can create an army, you can for 1 black attach the Transmorgant's Crown, and then when you sacrifice it, you get a card back, and in addition, you get a little more juice out of whatever fling effect you're using. After that, I'm thinking of most equipment now, and let's see if we can find other equipment that cares about when the attached creature dies. Just start with dies. Whenever opponent equipped creature dies, target opponent gets control of Avarice Amulet. That's not what we want. We want something. Blade of the Blood Chief is interesting. I don't know if you're playing that. Do we have a large Skull Clamp? Soul Ring. Skull Clamp obviously makes a lot of sense. Blade of the Blood Chief is good too. Now, granted, you don't want to put it on your armies, but it does grow creatures as they die. Eater of Virtue is a very cheap card that will grow, give 2 extra power to anything, and in addition, because they're tokens, the fact that they get exiled is less important. Let's see. Sylvok Life Staff gives +1 and gains you 3 life every time the creature dies. I think these are the best ones you'll get: Transmorgant Crown, Sylvok Life Staff, and Skull Clamp. This is your team, right? And whenever you attach these to one of your armies before you lose them, you're going to get a little more. Massive Grizzlebrand as well, but I don't love that the equip cost is 3. Granted, Ziatora adds 3 treasure every time, I believe. And yeah, and so it kind of does pay for itself, but that's still a lot of mana. You want to be gaining and going ahead every time you go through this kind of back and forth. I don't think you really want to be paying that much mana for that effect. But those would be the equipment I would immediately think of. Now, what is your other strategies? So you don't really have any other Aether blood artist style effects. You have a lot of ways to sacrifice and have an effect, but you don't have a lot of cards that benefit from generally cards being sacrificed. What I would consider is you don't have to go the blood artist route, but I would look for a few cards that care when things die, much like Skull Clamp. Because I can see here, let's take a look just casually at how many things sacrifice and get a specific effect. So Greater Good sacrifices to draw cards. Disciple of Bolas sacrifices to draw cards. Gerard Golgari Lichlord sacrifices to deal damage. This ETBs to sacrifice to deal damage. Mirkwood Bats is here. Okay, we're going to come back to that. This one sacrifices to draw, whereas it's power. I do like that. Gulgalar Gisa sacrifices to make more zombies. And then you have here Tormented Thoughts, which I really like, and Fling effects that also sacrifice to have a direct effect. Diabolic Intent sacrifices to tutor for a card. If you're noticing here, Corrupted Conviction is another one. You have lots and lots of sack outlets, and very few things actually happen when you sacrifice that creature, right? You pick one of these sacrifice effects and then you use it. So let's look at Ziatora and Greater Good as being really good examples of two different effects that are really strong that you want one or the other. When you're behind in cards, you want Greater Good. You want to sacrifice to Greater Good. And when you're behind on mana, you want to sacrifice to Ziatora. But if you have both, you can't get both. You get one and the other. And if you have two similar effects, such as Gerard and a Fling, or such as Disciple of Bolas, Corrupted Conviction, and Greater Good, whichever is the weakest of those effects is kind of rotting in your hand. Greater Good is really strong because you can do it at instant speed and repeatably. And you don't even mind discarding 3 because inevitably you're going to reach hand size and there's always cards you'd rather in your graveyard. So as long as Greater Good's on the field, Corrupted Conviction is a little worse. Disciple of Bolas is a little worse. They're not completely terrible because if you have a creature that has 3 power or less, you don't want to use Greater Good, but they're just not great. If you get anything that hits 4 power, immediately Greater Good gets better because you've already paid the mana for it. So, what I'd like to suggest here, outside of a few suggestions I've made before already, in addition to these Transmorgant Crown style things, just grab a few classic aristocrat cards. And by that I mean, let's think of the best ones. Midnight, where is our Midnight Reaper? Midnight Reaper is very cheap and keeps getting reprinted. Once again, it's non-token. Okay, let me think. Instead, let's see. Dark Prophecy. Dark Prophecy is a little more restrictive in the 3 black, but it doesn't mind if tokens die, so that's really nice. Let's do the whenever. Let's do the whenever check. Whenever a creature dies, and let's put ourselves into Jund, and let's put ourselves into Popular, just to give an idea. Blood Artist, Zulaport, Cutthroat are classics, but I think there'll be lower damage than what you could be doing with Flinging. Black Market, if you're not running that, which I don't think you are. Black Market's great here. A few bucks, and you'll get every time a creature dies, you put a counter on this, and then you keep getting more and more black mana for it. Moldervine Reclamation. It's non-token as well. This is the one I want to suggest. I want to suggest this one because this says whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and gain 1 life. Nice and easy. You are in the colors for it, and it triggers no matter which sack outlet you have. Revel in Riches is fine. Poison Tip Archer is fine. Grave Pact. Ooh, Grave Pact is expensive now, but a fantastic card that triggers whenever your creatures die. Pressuring everyone's life total. Sorry, board state. Marin. You could play Marin. That's going to start reanimating your creatures, or at least putting them into your hand as you gain experience counters. Marin's a beast. I very much recommend her. Let's see. Anything else? Non-token. I want things that are. It's another non-token. Fecundity? I believe that's how you pronounce that. This one is really good in your deck, but it's also kind of tough because it also affects your opponents. But it is still very, very strong. So I would think of that one as well. If you can guarantee, if you feel like you're sacrificing the most out of everyone, then it's going to be very strong out of your deck. Yeah, I would start with those because, as I said before, you have lots of ways to sacrifice and fewer ways to benefit from that sacrifice. There's, I just don't think you're going to have enough creatures, and you're not going to be able to pull far enough ahead because you're going to have to make sacrifices when your armies are smaller than you'd like. You're going to have to use Life's Legacy on a 3 power army when you'd much rather it on a 5 power army. So I would keep that in mind. Otherwise, the deck looks strong. You have a lot of lands. I think I could see you cutting back on a few. You are playing ramp from what I remember, and you're playing a lot of 2 mana ramp, which is where I think this deck wants to be, because a lot of your cards are within the 3 and 4 mana range. And I think the fact that your commander is 6 mana isn't that bad because you have a lot of things to do on the way there. So I think you can cut like 2-ish lands if you wanted to play a few more mana dorks. I think that would be fun. Okay, I hope this has helped. I like this deck. I love the theme of armies here. And one of my favorite things with armies is to consistently sacrifice them over and over. I am very, very excited for Orcish Bowmaster. I think this is going to be a very strong card. And I think you're going to have the most success when it is paired with something that can instantly sacrifice the Orc army over and over again. Because if one person wheels, you are going to get, I don't know. Let's be conservative here and say 12 to 15 triggers of Orcish Bowmasters. And with that in mind, you're going to either you're first going to do 12 to 15 damage, but you're also either going to get 12, a 12/12 or 12 1/1s if you sacrifice them in between the triggers. And I want you to think which one of those you'd rather have. I hope this was helpful. If you would like to show me a different version of this deck or any deck you'd like me to take a look at, there is a form in the video description you can fill out to send me your deck. Also, if you want to like, comment, and subscribe and do that YouTube thing, I would be very grateful. This was Cursed Deck Builder, and I hope you have fun throwing things at people.